Chairman, and I would like to thank the Ranking Member as well for their holding of the subcommittee markup. My amendment is very simple. It would define lifelines, which is a term that is used 4 times in this bill. The definition I am offering is not controversial. It is focused on infrastructure and has even passed previously in the Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program. During the hearing on this bill at the beginning of June, I asked the witnesses to explain the importance of infrastructure resiliency in mitigating the effects of storms. Dr. David Previtt highlighted the importance of lifelines and told this subcommittee that resilience and sustainability are hallmarks of what is being done in civil engineering. He explained that we need to understand the structural properties of the buildings, the infrastructure, and the utilities in order to mitigate the damage of these storms. Adding this definition will improve the bill and provide the Interagency Coordinating Committee on Windstorm Impact Reduction specific directions on the most important research topics. This amendment will help that committee and the involved agencies work effectively and efficiently toward the goal of reducing the impact of storms on our infrastructure. And in particular, I can speak about the damage that we sustained in Connecticut, not from tornadoes, but from Hurricane Irene and Superstorm Sandy. In our case, the extensive damage really was to utilities, and that severely impacted the resiliency of our communities, including at one point we've had lines down for 10 days or 2 weeks. This is dangerous for our citizens and extremely important that we pursue this important research. I urge you to support my amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Woman from Connecticut for her clarifying amendment and urge my colleagues to support this bill. My colleague's amendment would assure that this bill includes a comprehensive definition of lifelines. This is a common sense amendment, and we should all support its adoption. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment I am offering today simply states that if sufficient funds are not given to NWERP agencies to implement the program, then the NWERP agencies won't be forced to fulfill all the requirements of the Act. At the only hearing the subcommittee held on NWERP, all the outside experts expressed concern that the program was significantly underfunded. Instead of marking up a bill today that would provide the agencies with the funding necessary to undertake all the activities and responsibilities assigned by Congress, we are marking up a bill that cuts the authorization for NWERP. I cannot support a bill that cuts the program. My Republican colleagues are moving a bill that would cut the authorization levels by 14.5% below the levels they put in place for fiscal year 2008. It is not as if we are facing fewer wind-related disasters. Our nation is still recovering from a deadly and incredibly destructive tornado season. We are bracing for a hurricane season that NOAA predicts will be active or extremely active. As a Floridian who survived Hurricane Andrew, I'm worried about an active hurricane season that could wreak havoc across my home state. In a time of increased windstorms, I would think we would be marking up a bill that would give the agencies the resources they need to fully implement the program so that they can achieve the goal of improving our understanding of windstorms and lessen the impacts of these events. And it is not just that the bill we are marking up this morning cuts the agencies, but it does so without cutting any of the agency's responsibilities. Between our budgetary situation and the sequestration cuts, it is unrealistic to expect the agencies to implement this program without providing them with the necessary resources. My colleagues have to accept that they cannot have it both ways. We cannot continue to cut an agency's budget and still expect them to fulfill all of the responsibilities we have given them. With this bill and that philosophy does is set up our agencies to fail, and we do not want them to fail. We must provide our agencies with the appropriate level of resources to conduct the activities that we ask them to do. I wish that the subcommittee would have held additional hearings with Federal witnesses so that the members could have had the opportunity to ask questions about the elements of the program and how they're being implemented, what are the priority areas, and what level of resources the agencies need to fully implement the program. Without having that information, I cannot in good conscience support a bill that cuts funding without providing the agencies with the flexibility on implementing the requirements of the Act if they do not have the appropriate resources. I would have preferred to offer an amendment this morning that would provide the agencies in the program with the right authorization level, but without having the opportunity to hear from Federal witnesses, I am instead offering an amendment that simply gives them flexibility. I urge the adoption of this simple amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Authorizes the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program by adding Title I of Ms. Wilson's National Risk Reduction Act of 2013 to the bill under consideration this morning. The amendment also updates the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, or NIST's, statute to ensure that the agency conducts research specifically on fires occurring in the wildland-urban interface. Although infrequent, earthquakes are unique among natural hazards in that they strike without warning. While areas like my state of California, in addition to Oregon, Washington, and Alaska, are the most well-known areas for earthquakes, earthquakes are not a hazard that is confined to the West Coast. In fact, it's estimated that 75 million Americans in 39 states, and I note in the District of Columbia, where you enjoyed an earthquake recently, are exposed to significant seismic risk, with nearly all states in the U.S. having some level of risk. Additionally, the severity of the U.S. fire problem has grown, and the amount of damage caused by fires at the wildland-urban interface has risen. In fact, last year we saw more than 9.3 million acres burn across the United States, an area larger than the states of Delaware, Rhode Island, and Connecticut combined. And in my state of California, there have been more than 3,000 wildfires this year alone. As my colleagues are aware, fire season has started early this year, and unfortunately the number of destructive fires, the costs to contain them, and the damage caused will grow. Several years ago, the Cedar Fire and Witch Creek Fire devastated the northern communities of the city of San Diego and Poway, Scripps Ranch and Rancho Bernardo, as well as Tierra Santa. As a San Diego City Council member at the time, I remember firsthand the destructive impact of these fires on people's lives. Together, these fires destroyed thousands of homes, personal belongings, and memories, and recovery costs were in the billions of dollars. We need to adopt better preparedness measures. We can't prevent natural disasters, but we can do more to lessen the cost to human life and property. Over the last 2 years, the Federal Government has spent more than $136 billion on relief for hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, wildfires, and other extreme weather events. It's time that the government stops working in a reactive way to natural disasters and instead gets to work efficiently helping states and localities find the best steps to prepare for, plan for, and more quickly recover from these events. We know that for every dollar we spend now on resiliency, we can avoid at least $4 in future losses. It makes more sense to approach this by thinking how we can make the U.S. better prepared and not just the United States better prepared and not just certain areas. Natural disasters affect every state and region of the United States, and some places experience more than one type of hazard. So if we're focused on reducing spending, let's do it in a way that saves us more money in the long run, and that's a comprehensive approach. One of the witnesses at the subcommittee hearing on risk reduction, Dr. Pravat, stated in his testimony that it is important to consider the broader area of hazards mitigation. He went on to urge the Science Committee to not only reauthorize Windstorm risk reduction program, but also to include the reauthorization of earthquake risk reduction and other programs as part of a broader hazards bill. My amendment implements the doctor's recommendation by ensuring the legislation is focused on multiple hazards. As my colleagues may know, the reauthorization of these risk reduction programs is long overdue. The authorization for this important program expired in 2009. These are interagency programs that improve our understanding of earthquake phenomena and the potential impacts of earthquakes on our communities and turns that knowledge into mitigation and outreach activities that will save lives and reduce economic damages. Mr. Chairman, it is also important to note that when Congress first legislated a windstorm risk reduction program in 2004, it did so by combining the program with legislation that was amending the Earthquake Hazards Reduction Act of 1977. This demonstrates a long history that Congress has had in moving these important programs together, and in fact, over the last 2 Congresses, the committee has moved these programs in a single bill. The type of hazards and risk a community is exposed to depends on where the community is located. For my constituents, earthquakes and fires pose a greater threat. Mr. Chairman, my goal is the same as the author of this bill, to decrease the vulnerability of communities in my district. I am hopeful that we can adopt the amendment and broaden the scope of hazards covered in this bill, and it would be unfortunate if the committee prioritized one type of hazard over another, because at the end of the day, all of these programs will lead to a more resilient America, saving lives, property, and taxpayer money. I am focused on lowering spending, and we can do it in a pragmatic way that lessens the cost to human life and property. I urge adoption of this common sense amendment. Thank you for my colleagues' attention, and I yield the balance of my time.